All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to NASED's annual business meeting and presentation of the Awards of Excellence. First, I want to again thank our conference planning committee, Tanya West Hafner, Raven Bodine, and Beverly Moses. I would also once again like to thank our sponsors. Without their generous financial support, we simply could not have put on this conference. One last reminder that if you're following along, hold on just one second, y'all. My notes went away. There they are. Remember, if you're following along on social media, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter at NASED News, and the conference hashtag is hashtag NASED21. I'm sorry, my notes keep disappearing on me. At this time, we are going to view a video welcome from the sponsor of this afternoon's keynote speaker, Marty Greenlee and Neighborly Software.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Martin Greenlee, Senior Vice President of Sales here at Neighborly Software. Once again, Neighborly Software is proud to sponsor NASED's 46th Annual Educational Conference and Training. As a committed partner to NASED and to our approximately 300 neighbors nationwide, we pride ourselves on our core values of community, innovation, teamwork, integrity, enthusiasm, and service to deliver on our mission of helping communities help people. Neighborly Software was founded in 2016 and has quickly grown to become the 91st fastest privately owned company in the nation as recognized by Inc. magazine. Of the 5,000 companies recognized, Neighborly Software was the 4th fastest growing software company. Although we are truly honored at this recognition, we are most proud of the many community partners, tenants, landlords, businesses, and local and state governments that have been able to use our software to streamline their ability to provide and receive financial assistance in their respective communities. Stay tuned for a brief overview of Neighborly Software and how we are helping communities help people.
At Neighborly Software, our mission of helping communities help people is at the heart of all we do. With core values of cities, we believe partnerships plus communities equals the neighborly way. Our groundbreaking software has reinvented the way housing, economic, and community development programs are administered. Just ask our 270 plus neighbors. A powerful, specialized platform with flexible features drives operational efficiencies, improves compliance, and maximizes community outcomes. A solution that's affordable and user-friendly. Access files anytime, anywhere, from any device, empowering grant makers to increase impact. Our software is scalable and designed to meet your unique needs. Enroll and qualify applicants. Apply for grant and loan programs. Score applications. Meet compliance requirements. Upload rent rolls. Complete inspections. And make draw requests. 5 modules. 1 comprehensive solution. With Neighborly Software, you have an agile partner dedicated to improving impact, helping you overcome the challenges of managing grant programs while ensuring compliance and minimizing fraud. We'll keep you safe and sound with security and support you can count on. We're committed to better neighbors for a brighter future. Neighborly Software.
Hi everyone, it's me again. Thank you so much for your time and your interest in our solution. We're available to provide demos of our software. You can find our demo link on our website, and we just appreciate your support of NASED. And before we hear from our conference keynote speaker, Sanderson, on the science of happiness, I encourage all of us to take heart what truly makes ourselves and our communities happier through the many housing, economic, and community development funding programs we all administer and advocate for. Thank you, Catherine, for participating and sharing your perspective on happiness. I hope everyone takes care and stays safe and be healthy. Take care.
Thank you, Neighborly Software, for sponsoring the keynote address. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the NASED Conference keynote speaker, Dr. Catherine Sanderson. Dr. Sanderson is the Polar Family Professor and Chair of Psychology at Amherst College. She has published over 25 journal articles and book chapters, and in 2012, she was named one of the country's top 300 professors by the Princeton Review. She has written books on parenting and how mindset influences happiness, health, and even how long we live. Her latest book, published in North America as Why We Act, Turning Bystanders into Moral Rebels, examines why good people so often stay silent or do nothing in the face of wrongdoing. Today, she's presenting a talk to us on the science of happiness. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Catherine Sanderson. Dr. Sanderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. About 5 years ago now, I gave a version of this talk at a big financial services conference in Orlando, where people had the opportunity to go to see different speakers in a series of breakout sessions. So a woman came to my presentation on the science of happiness. And at the end of the talk, she came down and said, "You were great. I love this. I'm so glad I came." And then she paused and looked at me and said, "And I have to be honest, I nearly skipped your presentation because I just figured that I would hate you." And I said, "Well, thank you for that unusual compliment. And may I ask why you assumed you'd hate me?" And she said, "Well, I just figured anyone who talked about the science of happiness would be all about like kittens and rainbows, and you'd just be really irritating. And by the end of the hour, I'd want to strangle you, and I don't. So thank you so much." And I'm starting with that story because it actually illustrates a fundamental point that I'll return to again and again in today's talk. There are some people in the world, and some people listening right now, who are the kittens and rainbows people. And if you're one of those people, congratulations. This talk will be a wonderful affirmation of all of the things that you are already doing very well in your life. But then there are other people who don't naturally and easily find happiness. And I'm actually one of those people. And so I'll be talking today about the science of happiness, what does and what doesn't make us happy. But at the end, I'm going to share specific strategies that we all can use to find greater happiness, no matter where you fall on that natural happiness continuum. And don't worry, none of these things are like sell all your belongings and move to Aruba. But I want to start now with a very quick poll to get a sense of who you all are. So please take quickly and respond. Are you a kittens and rainbows person or not so much? And I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to answer, and then I will share the results. All right, so excellent. You guys are fast. Already nearly 70% of you have answered. Let's just go like 5 more seconds. We just hit 78%, so that's great. I'm going to count you down and I'm going to stop sharing. So if you want to get in your vote, this is your last chance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that, I think we hit 84%. And here's what's interesting. So 30% of you are going to have a wonderful affirmation. But about 70% of you are like me, not the naturally happy kittens and rainbows people. So thanks for starting us off with that. I now want to turn to a really important topic. And this is, what do we think makes us happy? But in reality, the research suggests will not. And what the research in the science of happiness says is there are many, in fact, things that we think will make us happy, but the data just doesn't bear out. Number one mistake we think about thinking something will make us happy, but it doesn't: money. Overwhelmingly, people think, oh, if I just had more money, surely I would be happier. This is a picture of Tiger Woods' house. And most people think, if I lived in a house like that, wouldn't I be happier every single minute of every single day? And the reality is, no. we actually adapt pretty quickly to newfound wealth. So initially, getting a raise or having more money, getting some kind of windfall does make us happier. But then we adapt to that newfound wealth and we don't experience a lasting increase in happiness. Some people have known this for a long time. As Benjamin Franklin says, money has never made man happy, nor will it. There is nothing in its nature to produce happiness. The more of it one has, the more one wants. And that's the challenge of money. Now, some of you, at least the older people on this call, might remember the excitement about getting your very first cell phone. Maybe you could recognize that cell phone in this picture. So for the older folks in this call, what could that first cell phone do? It could call people, maybe. But it was very exciting because all of a sudden you might be able to call people from the car. It was tremendous. But if I were to take your current phone and give you that very first cell phone you have, you wouldn't be very happy. Why? Well, because we've adapted. Now we do not want our phones to just let us call people from the car. No, we want our phones to let us be able to shoot a movie, read a book, buy a dress, all of these different things. And that's an example about the power of adaptation. And it's one of the reasons why more money is not the route to more happiness. So what else do we think will make us happier, but in reality does not? Climate. Overwhelmingly, people think, well, if I just lived in a warmer, prettier climate, surely I would be happier. Researchers in one study asked people, would you be happier if you lived in California or North Dakota? Can you predict what most people said? Most people said California. And that belief, in fact, forms the basis of a joke I tell students. So here's the joke. A patient goes to the doctor and the doctor says, I have terrible news. You have 6 months to live. And the patient says, well, that is terrible news. What do you suggest I do? And the doctor says, you should immediately move to North Dakota. And the patient says, absolutely, I'll do that right away. And if I move to North Dakota, will I live longer? And the doctor says, no, but it will feel like forever. Now, let me just say, people from North Dakota super don't like that joke. But here's the reality. The joke's actually on us. Gallup poll 5 years ago found that North Dakota is one of the top 5 happiest states. California is not. People living in North Dakota are, in fact, very happy. Once again, we're wrong in our expectation. What else do we think will make us happy, but really doesn't? Life events. Overwhelmingly, people think, if just this life event happens, then I will be happier. Now, that life event changes depending on your age. So it might be, when I buy a house, when I get a promotion, when I retire, again, when I win the lottery, when these things happen, then I will be happier. But the reality is we adapt to these life events and they don't bring us lasting happiness. You work harder and harder and harder to get a promotion. You get that promotion. And what does it turn out you have to do? That job. And that job has work and pressure and colleagues and deadlines. And that permanent happiness you thought was yours just isn't there. But there's one kind of life event that's a little bit interesting because the research shows that this life event, in fact, does increase happiness for some people. What's that life event? Marriage. The data on the science of happiness in marriage very consistently shows that marriage does make some people happier. So who are those people? Men. Married men are happier than single men. They're healthier than single men. They live longer than single men. They're less likely to be hospitalized for psychiatric disorders. So overwhelmingly, marriage is very good for men. And here's what's even better. I mean, at least for the men. It doesn't matter who they're married to. Anyone is good. Now, some people might be asking, well, how about the women? What's the data on the science of happiness for women? And here's what's fascinating. Women who are happily married experience higher levels of happiness than single women. But women who are unhappily married, they experience lower levels of happiness than single women. So what that data tells us is that for women, good marriage is good, but bad marriage is really bad. For men, it's all good. And what I like about that finding is that by all accounts, this finding suggests that this setup is going to be better for William than for Kate. Now, we hope it's a good marriage and she's happy, but William's mom, married to a prince, not so happy. One more life event that overwhelmingly we expect will make us happy, but the data is kind of mixed on, the life event of having children, becoming a parent. This is a little bit of an outdated picture of my 3 kids. And overwhelmingly, people have this expectation, well, surely becoming a parent will bring me lasting happiness. The reality day in, day out of parenthood is it's really hard. It's playing lots of boring games with absolutely no strategy. It's doing huge amounts of laundry. It's literally touching somebody else's poop. As the writer Anne Lamott says, having a baby is like suddenly getting the world's worst roommate. So what does the data on the science of happiness and parenthood tell us? It's really interesting. Parents have more joy than non-parents. So there's the joy of the homemade Mother's Day card, or your kid learning to read or ride a bike, swim. And those sort of wonderfully special moments are in fact bigger peaks than non-parents experience. But those highs, those peaks of parenthood are absolutely coupled with lows, with worry and stress and heartache. And those lows are lower than non-parents experience. So if you look overall at the data on the science of happiness and parenthood, what it tells us is that parents have more highs and parents have more lows, and non-parents live a much more even-keeled existence. Now, periodically I give one of these talks and someone will come up afterwards or now email me afterwards and they'll say, but Catherine, you have to remember, if you have children, you might get grandchildren, and grandchildren make me very happy. And what I say to that is, I am really hoping that's true. All right. So I've talked so far about all of the things that we think make us happy, but the data is really mixed on. And I want to turn now to the good news. And the good news is there are lots of things that do, in fact, lead to increased happiness. So what makes us happy? Well, behaviors, relatively low-level behaviors that we engage in our daily lives do lead to increases in happiness. Something as simple as eating. But it's not just eating like the act of chewing and swallowing. It's eating particular kinds of foods. What kinds of foods? Well, high fat, high sugar, chocolate, sweets, ice cream, French fries. There's absolutely no evidence for the science of happiness associated with eating celery, for example. Now, fortunately, that data on the science of happiness and eating is also predictive of the science of happiness and exercise. You might have heard about the link between endorphins and exercise and happiness. And that data is very strong and very consistent. What we know is that while people exercise, it increases this level of chemicals, endorphins in their bodies. And that feeling, in fact, makes us feel better. Plus, one of the best feelings we can have is the feeling of having exercised. And of course, the only way to get the having exercise feeling, you have to exercise first. It's too bad. Now, another kind of behavior that makes us happy, shopping. But it's actually more interesting than you might think. I want you to think now, if you've ever had the experience of shopping and finding the perfect gift for someone. If you've ever had that experience, that feeling of happiness actually makes people feel better than when they buy for themselves. And this is a really important finding that I'm going to return to at the end of my talk today, because what it tells us is that the effect in terms of shopping on happiness is not driven by shopping getting things. It's actually about shopping relationship building. And that's a really important finding to remember. I started today by asking people, who are the kittens and rainbows people and who are not? And what we learned, I think, was about 30% of us here listening are the kittens and rainbows people, and about 70% of us, including me, are not. But that finding is really important because what we know from research in positive psychology is that about 50% of our happiness is in fact driven by who we are, our personality. And this is one of the reasons why things like a new cell phone, a raise, better climate, more money doesn't lead to lasting happiness, because so much of our happiness is about who we are, not our situations. So what is it about personality that makes us happy? Well, there are three consistent findings in the literature. One, people who are extroverted. This means people who are outgoing, they're social, they like to meet new people, do new things. These people probably have an easier time finding and forming and maintaining social networks. I'll return to that point later as well. Another key finding, people who feel good about themselves, people who are high in self-esteem. Here's a cartoon that kind of shows the opposite. Dear diary, sorry to bother you again. Why is self-esteem so predictive? People who are high in self-esteem are very good at imagining some kind of silver lining, no matter what. Freud told a story about a couple who came to see him for therapy. And in the course of the therapy session, the husband turned to the wife and said, if one of us were to die, I think I would go live in Paris. Because of course, if it were one of us, I have this Paris plan. People who are high in self-esteem are very good at finding that silver lining no matter what. My oldest child has a remarkable ability to find the silver lining in any situation. Andrew was in public school from kindergarten through 8th grade. In 9th grade, he moved to an elite private school he was woefully underprepared for in virtually all respects. And he struggled mightily, but he struggled especially in Spanish. And midway through his first trimester, he received a warning grade of a 50. This is a school that uses the traditional 1 to 100 grading scale. So a 50 was really not good. So at the end of the fall trimester, Andrew emails me and says, Mom, got my grades, good news about Spanish. So I picked up the phone, I called him and I said, hey, that's great news. And he goes, oh yeah, it's really great news. And I said, well, what'd you get? And he said, I got a 58. And I said, that is not good news. And he said, no, it is. It's 8 points higher than I had in October. And I said, you got an F. You got an F in Spanish. And he said, oh, Mom, it's really an F plus. And I said, I'm a professor. Like, there is no F plus. Like, that grade doesn't exist. And he said, well, the rate I'm going to have a 66 in January. And I said, that's a D. Like, that's also bad. But here clearly is the good news for Andrew is that, by all accounts, someday he's going to end up in prison, and hopefully not a Spanish speaking prison. But he's going to be fine. He's going to call home and say, Mom, I got this bunk bed. I got a roommate. I got this exercise yard. They bring in the meals through the door 3 times a day. It's so relaxing. Because again, anyone who can call home with the good news about the F plus, he's going to be fine. He's probably going to be poor and living in my basement, but he's going to be happy. And this example, of course, is a small, subtle example of a negative event, but this ability to find the silver lining, no matter your circumstances, it predicts happiness in all different kinds of settings. And I'm going to share with you now one of my favorite quotes that perfectly illustrates the power of optimism, no matter what. And it's by Nelson Mandela. I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat and death. And this impact of personality on happiness brings me to a really important finding, and that is that for all of us, the power of relationships is fundamental, and it seems to increase with age. I'm now going to share with you some data from a giant poll done by Gallup of hundreds of thousands of Americans looking at happiness across the lifespan from age 18 to 85. So here's the data. So what you can see here is what researchers call the U-shaped happiness curve. As you can see in this chart, people in their younger years, 18 to 21, are very happy. And as I say to my college students, what the hell is there not to be happy about when you're 18 to 21? Then, in what is bad news for some of us, including me, happiness drops like a stone right up until around age 50. Of course, this is what corresponds with what we think about in our society as the midlife crisis. It's also, perhaps coincidentally, an age at which many people have teenagers living in their homes. But then, in what is good news for all of us, happiness increases in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s. And again, they've studied people up to age 85. So this is really a remarkable finding, because what it tells us is that people in their 70s and 80s are in fact very happy. So to examine what explains this greater happiness among people in their 70s and 80s, researchers have done qualitative interviews examining how they're spending and structuring their life and time. And what they find is very consistent. People in their younger years are very focused on having big social networks, what I like to call Facebook friends. People in their 70s and 80s, they get rid of the riffraff and they focus on having a smaller number of relationships, but relationships with people who they care about and who care about them. And that is what leads to increased happiness, as is perfectly illustrated by this following quote. As we grow up, we realize it is less important to have lots of friends and more important to have real ones. So here's the most fundamentally important lesson from the field of positive psychology. Relationships matter. Now, I've talked about relationships earlier. Marriage, if you're a man, children for no one. But the good news is it doesn't matter the label of the relationship. What matters is the quality of the relationship. We can have high quality relationships with friends, with family members, with romantic partners that we're not dating, with colleagues, and so on. What matters is not the label. What matters is the authenticity and intimacy. And to me, that's an especially important point, since often many of us fail to focus on the relationships right in front of us. Who here has ever been, at least pre-COVID, in a restaurant or airport or park and seen two people together, but with each of them on their cell phone, not really communicating? What we know from research in psychology is that the mere presence of a cell phone in a given environment, even if it's turned off and put on a table between two strangers, lowers the level of the conversation. Conversations had in the presence of, again, even a turned off cell phone are less intimate, less vulnerable, less revealing. So, a really important strategy for building and maintaining close relationships: put away the phone. I now want to turn to my second poll question, and let's see what you think here. And what I'm looking for is which of these findings is the most surprising. That money doesn't predict happiness, that climate doesn't predict happiness, that giving feels better than receiving, that personality matters so much, or that the quality of relationship matters more than the quantity. So I'll give you 20 seconds or so. I'll stop talking, and then I will share the results. And for this one, again, you have to choose your favorite. There'll be one more poll question when you get to give a couple of different answers. All right, so over, let's see, 70% of you voted already, which is great. So I'm gonna give it 5 more seconds, and then I am gonna stop the poll just in the interest of time. So I'm counting down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we just hit 80% participating, so that's great. Share your results. And so what you can see here, which is so interesting, is that 43% of you said that personality matters so much. And I agree, that's a really interesting and surprising and important finding. But don't worry, if you're one of the non-kittens and rainbows people, I'm going to talk about some strategies we all can use in a bit. And about 30% of people said that the climate finding was particularly surprising as well. Those are the 2 most surprising. All right, I now want to turn to a really important topic. And that is about, in fact, the power of genes. This is one of the reasons why personality matters so much. That in fact, personality is encoded in our genes. And this is one of the reasons why we don't experience a lasting effect of different things. Oops, sorry. Here we go. As this cartoon says, I could cry when I think of the years I wasted accumulating money, only to learn that my cheerful disposition is genetic. And yeah, the reality is happiness is encoded in our genes and is responsible for about 50% of how we feel. But here's what's so important. This is a reason why things like money and climate and better cell phone don't pay off. But this also tells us that 50% of our happiness is up to us. 50% of our happiness is not determined by our genes. So that means some people have a head start, but 50% is a lot within our own control. And that's the part of happiness that I care about, because we can do something about that. Now, I've talked from the very beginning today about the power of adaptation. And what I've said again and again is, oh yeah, adaptation is a bad thing because, you win the lottery, you get a raise, you have a better climate, you get a better cell phone, you're not going to be lasting in terms of increased happiness. And that's all true. But here's why the power of adaptation is actually a really good thing in terms of our happiness. Why? Because the power of adaptation works in both directions. I'm going to tell you now about a really difficult story. And this story may be familiar to some of you, depending on where you are in the country. It's the story of a family living in a small town in Connecticut a few years ago, the family of Dr. William Pettit, husband, wife, 2 girls. One night, 2 men who'd recently been released from jail broke into this family's home. They tied the dad up in the basement, and they tied the mom and 2 daughters to their beds. And they then proceeded to sexually assault all 3 of them. The girls were ages 11 and 17. Then, to hide evidence of their crimes, the men set the house on fire. The dad was able to escape from the basement. He had a head injury, but he lived. But the mom and both daughters died of smoke inhalation. So most of us hear about that story and we think, how could he ever be happy again? He's lost his wife, he's lost both of his daughters, and he hasn't just lost them. He's lost them in about the most horrific set of circumstances that we can wrap our minds around. And it seems impossible to imagine that he could ever find happiness again. And yet, here's a picture of William Pettit from a few years ago. He met a woman who volunteered as a photographer for the foundation he established to honor his family's memory. Over time, they became friends, then they fell in love, and his first wife's family attended their wedding. They said, we're so happy that you have found someone to share your life with again. And a couple of Decembers ago, they welcomed a little boy. So this doesn't mean that he's the same happy. And it doesn't mean that that tragedy doesn't change and shape and influence his life. It always will. But what this story speaks to is the power of the human spirit, that even in the midst of great tragedy and loss, we all have the ability to find happiness again. And ultimately, the most important lesson that I take from the field of happiness is that the power of effort matters for most of us. We have to decide that we want to be happy. We have to decide that we deserve to be happy. And we have to be willing to structure our lives to bring us that happiness that we deserve. As the writer Elizabeth Gilbert says, happiness is the consequence of personal effort. You fight for it, strive for it, insist upon it, and sometimes even travel around the world looking for it. You have to participate relentlessly in the manifestations of your own blessings. And once you have achieved a state of happiness, you must never become lax about maintaining it. You must make a mighty effort to keep swimming upward into that happiness forever, to stay afloat on top of it. So now, as promised at the beginning, I'm going to end my talk by sharing 10 specific strategies that you all can use to experience increased happiness. These are all empirical strategies based on research findings in psychology, and I'm giving you 10 because I want every single person here to find something that they can use in their lives moving forward. So 1, change your behavior. There are lots of relatively low-level behaviors that we can engage in that do in fact lead to increased happiness. Getting enough sleep, exercising, meditating. Research is very strong across all three of these dimensions that people who get enough sleep, engage in some kind of exercise regularly, and meditate. Any of those three leads to better physical health, but it also leads to better psychological well-being. These are all pretty short, pretty easy, pretty cheap. And so again, if you're not doing any or all of these, this is a great place to start. 2, find your match. And this is true both professionally and personally. As Steve Jobs said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. So we know that finding this match, finding a job that gives you a sense of fulfillment and meaning makes you happier, but so can other things, volunteering in your community, doing things that you find meaningful in your own life. We also know that this is very individual. So what makes you happy might not make your neighbor, your cousin, your boss, your spouse, your child happy. This is why it's really important to find what feels good to you. There's a wonderful scale in psychology. It's called the sensation-seeking scale. And what this scale measures is the extent to which people feel happiest under high levels of physiological arousal, heart beating fast, rapid breathing, muscle tension. People who love this feeling enjoy things like bungee jumping or parachuting, skydiving. Some people love that feeling, other people do not. This is not a scale that's measured like IQ, where high is good and low is bad. What's important about this finding is that different experiences make different people happy. So figure out what feels good to you. Bungee jumping, skydiving feels good, go for it. But if it doesn't, choose something else. 3, spend time in nature. And this is one of the most consistent findings in the empirical research. One of the earliest studies found that patients who had been assigned to a wing in a hospital that overlooked a lovely park recovered faster from surgery than patients who'd had the exact same surgery but had been assigned to a wing in the hospital that overlooked a parking lot. Patients assigned to the wing overlooking the lovely park got out of bed faster, had lower reports of needing medication from the nurses, and got discharged faster from the hospital. So simply looking at nature through a window led to faster recovery from surgery. Now, to examine what is it about looking at nature that speeds up physical healing, researchers brought in other people and they randomly assigned them to look at different kinds of photos while they were in an fMRI machine, so a machine measuring patterns of brain activation. They showed them different images. If you look at the bottom of your screen, I'm actually showing you 2 images that were used in this study. As you can see, both of these images are visually appealing. They have a range of colors, of sky, of clouds. It's not that the scene that's the urban city is showing, smog or graffiti or traffic. But what they found was that people's brains responded in very different ways. People who were looking at the urban city skyline showed lots of brain activation. Their brain was active, it was firing, it was processing. People looking at the rural nature scene showed relaxed, calm brain waves, like they were meditating or sleeping. So this finding suggests that just spending time in nature gives the brain relaxation, and that leads to higher levels of happiness. And don't worry, you don't have to move to Wyoming. Even spending short periods of time within an urban environment, but in a green setting, also leads to lower blood pressure and higher levels of mental well-being. 4, express gratitude. One of the most simple and effective ways of feeling happier is to focus on what is good in your life, not what's bad. Keeping a gratitude journal or just making a list before you go to bed each night. But here's the key. They have to be things that are good in your life right now, not the things that will be good once you retire, win the lottery, move to Wyoming, whatever. Things that are good right now. As Dale Carnegie said, one of the most tragic things in human nature is that all of us tend to put off living. We are all dreaming of some magical rose garden over the horizon instead of enjoying the roses that are blooming outside our windows today. One of my favorite ideas comes from Marty Seligman, a professor at Penn. And what he has people do is to think about someone who played a fundamental role in changing and shaping their life in some key way. Could be a boss, could be a neighbor, could be a teacher. But what he has people do is to sit down and write that person a letter, and then Travel to that person, stand in front of them, and read the letter aloud. And that gratitude visit feels really great for the person who's reading the letter, and of course, for the person who's hearing that letter. And what do so many of us do? So many of us fail to tell somebody what they meant to us until it's their eulogy. So this idea, don't wait for the eulogy. Take a moment, write that person a letter, tell them what they mean while they're still alive. 6, smile, even when you aren't happy. This is the sort of fake it till you make it idea. As philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh says, sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. Fascinating research now tells us that the mere act of smiling changes how your body responds to pain. In a very clever study, researchers brought in people and had them hold chopsticks in their teeth in one of 3 facial expressions: a neutral expression, a slight smile, or a big beaming smile. Then, while you held the chopstick in your teeth, you put your hand in a bucket of freezing cold ice water. And they told you, keep it there as long as you can. What'd they find? People holding the big beaming smile kept their hand in the bucket of ice water significantly longer. The mere act of smiling changed how their body responded to pain. 7, give a gift to anyone. And I love this one in part because anything counts. People who volunteer in their community, higher levels of happiness. People who donate to charity, higher levels of happiness. Every single country that's colored green in this map, there is a positive correlation between charitable giving and happiness. So this is a universal finding. Research using fMRI data has shown that the mere act of thinking about giving a gift to a friend activates a part of the brain that is in charge of processing rewarding experiences, the exact same part of the brain that is activated when you eat chocolate or use cocaine, but that's a less healthy example. 8, spend money wisely. I talked earlier about the link between money and happiness. And I said, oh, no, how much money you have, it doesn't matter. But here's what's really important to remember. You can spend money in better or worse ways in terms of happiness. So what's a good way? Spending money on experiences, tickets to the big game or a Broadway show or travel. What's not such a good way of spending money? On belongings. Initially, it's exciting, but then it just becomes your old watch, shoes, car. As no one says on their deathbed, I should have bought more crap. And as philosopher Roger Corliss says, trying to be happy by accumulating possessions is like trying to satisfy hunger by taping sandwiches all over your body. Just doesn't work. 9, avoid comparisons. And this to me is one of the most important because many people, in fact, feel perfectly happy about their own lives right up until they start to compare their lives to those of others around them, as this cartoon illustrates. I do count my blessings, but then I end up counting those of others who have more and better blessings, and that pisses me off. Or as Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And for many of us, this is especially hard when we spend time on social media, in which lots of people talk about only the good. My kid is valedictorian. I just ran the Boston Marathon in under 3 hours. Again, our family went to Tahiti for 2 weeks and we loved each other the whole time. So when I'm on social media, I try to represent my life as it authentically is by writing things like, all of my kids have lice, which I'm telling you more often than not really seems to have been true for many, many of my parenting years. Finally, build and maintain relationships. And I give this one last because it's the most important. But here's the reality. We don't get good relationships by accident. We get good relationships by investing time and energy and effort and conflict and compromise. I use this picture as a metaphor. Because if you look at a dancer on point from a distance, it looks easy, it looks effortless, it looks magical. But the reality of dancing on point is it's hard. Your toes are bruised and bloodied, and it's painful. And it's only to look at it from a distance that looks easy. And I want to end by giving you one final quote that perfectly illustrates this reality of the joy and challenge of relationships, and it's by Tolstoy. But on entering upon family life, he saw at every step that it was utterly different from what he had imagined. At every step he experienced what a man would experience who, after admiring the smooth, happy course of a little boat on a lake, should get himself into that little boat. He saw that it was not all sitting still, floating smoothly, that one had to think to, not for an instant to forget where one was floating, and that there was water under one, and that one must row, and that his unaccustomed hands would be sore, and that it was only to look at it that was easy, but that doing it, though very delightful, was very difficult. And that finding fundamentally is exactly what the research on the science of happiness tells us. Relationships are the single best predictor of our happiness, but we don't get those relationships without investing time and energy and conflict and compromise. And I want to end now by giving our third and final poll. And for this one, you actually can choose multiple different choices. So again, I'll just give you a few minutes, not a few minutes, I'll give you 1 minute. Scroll down to the bottom. I know we're always tight on time and you have a busy rest of your afternoon agenda, but just take a minute and share what you found most useful. And again, for this poll, you can choose more than one. So you all are doing a great job. Already over 30% of you have participated. Oh, now it just hit 40% and just now hit 50%. So that's great. Hoping to have time to hear from as many people as possible. It's always interesting to what people found most useful. And now we've just hit 60%, which is great. I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds because I know that I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A if possible. And we've just hit 70%. And I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to get in your last response. Again, feel free to scroll down to see all the options. And I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I am going to end the poll and I am going to share the results. And so what you can see here is that about 50% of people, again, thought change behavior was important. I think that spending time in nature was actually the most common response with 69 people, 69% of people, and 62% felt build and maintain close relationships, and 50% voted for express gratitude. So wonderful examples for all. And finally, my very final slide. And this is a picture of my lovely dog. And I'm ending with this picture because it illustrates something really important. Pets bring us what kind of love? Unconditional. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We have the 3 kids. You saw that picture earlier, and we have this lovely dog. And we have the following deal. If one of us leaves the other one, the one who leaves takes the 3 kids, and the other one gets this lovely dog. And that has kept our relationship very strong and very committed. A few years ago, I gave a version of this talk in Dallas. This is my final story. And a man came up afterwards and he says, I have the perfect illustration of your point. Imagine you come home from work one day and you put your dog and your wife in the trunk of your car, and then you drive around for an hour. At the end of the hour, when you open up the trunk, guess who's still happy to see you? Then that man told me he was divorced. And I was like, really? Can't imagine. Anyway, so you all have been so patient. I know it's always hard hearing a virtual speaker, but I want to just say that, as you can tell, I have great excitement about this talk. If anyone would like a copy of my slides, just shoot me an email. You can also watch a version of this talk, as I say, a full body talk pre-COVID on my website. And for anyone who's interested in the scientific research I've described, most of this is taken from my book, The Positive Shift, which is available on Audible and Amazon and independent bookstores everywhere. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides. I don't know if we have time for Q&A. I'm glad to do Q&A, but I also know it's a really busy afternoon, and I'm certainly glad for people to respond individually to me. And I'm just going to take a moment and just put my email address in the chat room. Anyone can certainly reach out and ask for a copy of my slides or any questions that they have time for.
Sure. Thank you so much. So we do have some time for some Q&A. I'm monitoring the chat. You're getting lots of love in the chat. People are so excited. I know for me, this is really uplifting. And I do want to say one of the funny things that happened when you were talking in the initial slides about food and the kind of food that makes people happy. I was like, I'm right there with you. And then you made a comment about celery. And yesterday in the networking event, I was in a group with someone and we were talking about nostalgia and foods that kind of brought the sense of home. I went into my love of the smell of celery. And so one of my NASED counterparts private messaged me and they were like, celery. So I will say there is someone out there in the world who does find great joy from celery. So thank
Christy,
you so much.
You are the first person who has ever shared love for celery. Usually when I do this, people are like, chocolate, ice cream, mac and cheese, again, fried food. So good for you. Good for you. Role model.
Thank you. All right. So does anybody have any questions or comments? You're welcome to unmute, turn on your camera, unmute and say something. Or I'm just going to keep scrolling through. Everybody's just talking about how much they love it. So, Joe, do you have a question? Oh, no, just showing your face. Well, oh no, you're Darth Vader again. You're the computer. You're the computer. I don't know why that happens. Mary, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to, but first of all, I could listen to this every single day. It just makes me so happy. I'm lucky enough that this is the second time I've heard this presentation, and it was just as much fun as the first time. Maybe I was missing something at some point, but I was really surprised to see humor not showing up in any of the sort of strategies or things that make us happy.
Thank you so much for that question, Mary. I always love getting that question because, in fact, humor is something that's really important. So here's what's interesting about the effect of humor. There's really two things. One, humor is actually a mechanism explaining why personality matters so much. So I talked about people who are high in self-esteem, people who are optimistic. What research shows is that people who are optimistic are very good at looking at bad things in a humorous light. And I actually give an example in my book that's a quote from like a New York Times columnist, but it perfectly illustrates it. And he talks about he and his wife going to a really disappointing and depressing conference about how poorly their son was doing in school. And they walked out of the conference and the husband turned to the wife and said, well, I guess we know he's not cheating. And to me, that was like right. Isn't that a perfect example, Mary? Right? Because it's like saying, okay. And that is an example of using humor. And it's one of the things that people it's the mechanism by which personality can matter. The other key thing, and this actually ties into my last point, is that people are happier in relationships when they have the same sense of humor, when they find the same things funny. I'm sure we can all think about a friend or colleague we've had in which you're like, that's not funny. And they think it is, but they're wrong. And so it's a kind of example where people who think puns are funny or something, you're like, that's not funny. Or people have a very different taste in what is funny or what is humorous in terms of, comedy or TV shows or movies. What we find is that a match in terms of people's finding the same thing funny is a strong predictor of relationship satisfaction. Great question. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that, Mary.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks.
And I will say, I think some of the funniest moments professionally I have ever had is from NASED. I immediately wanted to type yogurt spoon. And I mean, there are moments where I can't look at people because there are so many funny moments. Because I've been involved with this organization since 2006. And I just love how we build year upon year as people come in. And so anyway, are you giving me that it's time? Sorry. Oh, okay, good.
relationships, right? I mean, that's a really great example, Christy, is it's relationships. And so I think very broadly, what do we know about finding meaning? What do we know? Relationships matter. And people who are happier in their jobs, happier in their networks, are also more productive. So that's a good thing.
Great. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having you with us today. We really just, I mean, seriously, the chat is just absolutely blowing up with how happy this made all of us today. So thank you again for your remarks and being with us today. And also thank you to Neighborly Software for sponsoring this important talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. More happiness in the world is good for us all. So thank you for the opportunity. As you can tell, I think giving the talk makes me happy. So have a very good rest of your day. Stay safe, everyone. And thank you for this invitation. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right. So feeling great joy and happiness, I'd like to now convene the 2021 annual business meeting of the National Association for County, Community, and Economic Development, which includes our awards, scholarship winner, and the election of new officers and directors. We are pleased to announce the recipient of this year's John C. Murphy Scholarship Award. To announce the award recipient, please welcome Jillian Gofina from Henrico County.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Christy. NASED Scholarship Committee awards a $1,500 scholarship to an undergraduate or graduate student studying community development, planning, or housing. The committee this year consisted of Chair Mark Soroy from Clackamas County, Oregon, Elena Rivera from Travis County, Texas, Raven Bodine from Henry County, Georgia, and Max Holthusen from Ramsey County, Minnesota. And I apologize because I very likely mispronounced some of those names. We at Henrico County, Virginia, had the honor of nominating this year's winner of the scholarship, Jacqueline Wilkins. Jacqueline is from Prince William County, Virginia, which is also a NASED member, and she has worked previously with their zoning and parks departments before moving to Richmond to attend Virginia Commonwealth University, where she is self-funding her education. Jacqueline applied for our internship earlier this year, and as someone wrapping up her third year in undergraduate studies, she was chosen over several graduate students to work in our office. Jacqueline has been a valuable member of our team over the last several months. She has been assigned many ongoing projects on various topics, and she has excelled at all of them, including the ones where she has to constantly ask David and me to complete our assigned parts. We are extremely grateful that Jacqueline will likely continue in our department until she continues her undergraduate degree next May. David and I and the rest of the Henrico Department of Community Revitalization are thrilled that Jacqueline was chosen for this scholarship. So please join me in congratulating the 2021 NASED Scholarship winner, Jacqueline Wilkins. Jacqueline, congratulations. Please share a few comments.
Thank you for the introduction, Jillian. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Wilkins, and I'm honored to be this year's John C. Murphy Scholarship recipient. I'm currently completing my last year of undergraduate studies at VCU in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm majoring in urban and regional studies and minoring in psychology. While finishing up my degree, I'm also working as an intern with the Henrico County Department of Community Revitalization, as Jillian said, part-time throughout the week. Even though working and going to school can be a lot to balance at times, the experience I'm getting is invaluable and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Through an elective I chose to take at VCU, I was introduced to the field of community and economic development, and from there I became deeply interested in the class material. Upon seeing an opening with Henrico County this past April, I knew I had to jump at the opportunity to discover what this avenue of planning was all about. Not only was I excited to secure an internship during a global pandemic, but I was ecstatic to find out that I was chosen over a pool of graduate students who wanted the same position as I did. Since starting with the Henrico County Department of Community Revitalization in April of 2021, I've contributed to many of the department's projects. I played a part in the drafting of the 2021-2022 Annual Action Plan, and the employee primarily in charge of the data management of our CARES Act-funded CDBG home and ESG programs was assigned the role of project manager for the creation of a new CDBG home policies and procedures manual, and helping to draft up program contracts for this coming fiscal year, and will oversee the project management of our upcoming CAPER. As someone with an eye for design, I also periodically help with any graphic design or display board work needed by the department as well. I feel as though my education and experience within Henrico County will help me secure a job in either the community and economic development realm or urban planning field after graduation this May. Ideally, I will continue to contribute to the functions of local government in some capacity and maintain my involvement with NASED. I want to extend my appreciation to David Sachs, Jolene Gaffina, and Rachel Thayer for nominating me for this scholarship and serving as mentors to me throughout my internship. I would also like to thank the NASED Scholarship Committee, Board, and all of those within this organization who make this scholarship opportunity possible. I know many students like myself who have to fund their own education are grateful for opportunities like this one, and I will certainly be putting this reward money to use. Thank you again for your support, and thank you for letting me attend this conference.
Great. Thank you so much, Jolene and Jacqueline, and congratulations, Jacqueline. Well deserved. All right. So we've now reached the awards portion of our program, and I'll now turn it over to NASED Vice President Jim Johnston, Chair of the Awards Committee, to present this year's NASED Award of Excellence. As a reminder, a summary of all award-winning projects can be found on NASED's conference website.
Thanks, Christy. Each year, NASED recognizes members for their outstanding efforts in the affordable housing and community and economic development fields. The committee this year consisted of myself as chair, Josh Beck from Kane County, Illinois, Kayla Nelson from El Paso County, Colorado, Kelly Engelman from Dakota County, Minnesota, and Jolene Gaffina from Henrico County, Virginia. This year, as always, we saw some fantastic projects which will all be featured on the NASED blog and communications in the coming year. I will read the category, the winning county or city, and the name of the winning project for each winning team. We also have a few slides of the projects that you can view. Okay, without further ado, the envelope, please. Oh wait, I don't have one. The NASED 2021 Awards of Excellence winners are, in the category of Community Development, Fairfax County, Virginia, Lee District Community Center. Congratulations to Ben Boxer and the team at Fairfax County. The awards committee noted that this project is innovative, transferable, and sustainable. In the category of Economic Development, the winner is Nassau County, New York, Boost Nassau Restaurant Recovery Grant Program. The awards committee commended Kevin Crean and his team for the use of sustainable CDBG funds, noting the greater impact despite smaller grant awards. In the category of homeless coordination / assistance, the winner is Cook County, Illinois, Cook County Legal Aid for Housing and Debt. In this project, Cook County took a holistic approach and used a variety of funds. The committee saw this as a project demonstrating leadership and inclusion. Congratulations to Dominic Tochi and his team at Cook County. As a reminder, more about each of these award-winning projects is at the summary of awards in the chat. In the category of affordable housing, Los Angeles County Development Authority, LACDA, Studio 6 model, try this again. Studio 6 motel conversion, a creative approach to permanent housing. Congratulations to Sander Schmidt and the LACDA. The awards committee noted that in this project, leaders were making sure that by hiring a mental health professional as the property manager, the management is trained for the community they work with. In the category of planning, policy, program management, the winner is Westchester County, New York, Census 2020. The committee chose this project for its innovation and focus on the planning for the future. Congratulations, Pam Tarlow and team. In the category of innovation, Henrico County, Virginia is the winner for its Restoring Henrico's Historic Black Cemeteries project. Lastly, congratulations to Ashley Catterturn and those at Henrico County. The awards committee found this to be a trend-setting sustainable project with tangible results. Again, refer to the summary of awards for full details, and all the projects will be highlighted during the upcoming year as well. Thank you to everyone who submitted a project, and congratulations again to the winners. With that, I turn it back over to Christy.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Before we begin the Board of Directors and Officers election, I want to thank members of the NASED members for the opportunity to serve as your president. As I reflect on the past year, I'm reminded how different my experience as president has been from how I imagined it would be. I expected I'd be standing before you all behind a podium in a large room in a hotel, looking out at circular tables with chairs, wearing a nice jacket in the cool weather of Colorado and the chilly hotel air. I would have been tired due to hosting people in the president's suite as an ad hoc hospitality suite, exhausted but energized by the late hours of great conversation and laughter. I would also be dreading all the pictures I would have had to be in today, because anybody who knows me knows how I hate a good picture. So not a fan of those. Instead, I was gifted this amazing opportunity to be NASED's first and hopefully last completely virtual president. And I use the word gifted purposefully. As we all continued to navigate a second year of the pandemic and a once in a lifetime amount of federal funding, we also continued to meet, network, support, learn, and share ideas with one another. We experienced a lot of change as an organization, with cherished colleagues moving on to new opportunities or retirement, as well as the loss of one of our own. Those losses were met with the willingness of others to step into committee chair and vice chair and board of director roles, moving a new generation into the NASED leadership pipeline. With that new leadership, we leaned into economic development in a way we haven't before, allowing NASED to further explore how to integrate and highlight the economic work our members implement through our first economic development conference. We added a strong online educational component this year with amazing success. This new venture allowed for a true win-win, meeting the needs of our membership and beyond with exemplary training and increased revenue for NASED, making it one of the most successful financial years in some time. Additionally, your NASED Board of Directors just completed a strategic planning process, creating a new vision and mission statement and related goals to be rolled out in the upcoming year. It was a significant time commitment, and I want to thank the board for their dedication and conscientiousness to the organization. We're very excited for what the future holds for NASED. Even with the forward energy and excitement our organization experienced, 2021 continued to be a challenging year. But NASED members never lost sight of why we do this work. For our communities, for those experiencing homelessness or who are precariously housed, for small businesses struggling to stay afloat, for underserved communities who must be seen and invested in and not hidden, and for disproportionately impacted communities who need structures and systems that right centuries of oppression and harm. Fred Rogers, affectionately known to most of us as Mr. Rogers, once said, "We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. In moments of fatigue or weariness, or wondering if your work makes a difference, remember Mr. Rogers' words. He is speaking to you, to me, to all of us, working day in and day out to see the need and respond to it." Finally, I want to say thank you to my fellow officers and board members, NASED staff, committee chairs and vice chairs, for their support and hard work over this past year. The business of managing and running NASED is truly a collaborative effort, particularly in a year that's called us to new and urgent work in our communities. And while I may be moving into a new role, past president, I know that my work and responsibility to the organization does not end. Before we move on to the next item, I want to acknowledge a board member who should be with us today but is not. Earlier this year, Pima County, Arizona's Danny Tylecki passed away after a brave fight with cancer. He leaves behind his wife and 3 small children. Those who knew Danny and he was a friend to everybody. Loved his sense of humor and fun, his compassion towards others, his passion with which he served his community, and his willingness to always help others and find solutions. He was an active NASED member, enriching all aspects of his involvement with his trademark Joy for Life. We miss Danny dearly, and we wish you were here with us today. We know the Pima County and Tucson community are better for his having lived and served. Rest in peace, Danny. So at this time, I'd like to ask NASED immediate past president, Mary Keating, to give the reports of the nominating committee and lead the election of new officers and board members.
Thank you, Christy. Beautiful words today. And yeah, we all miss Danny, and we know that he lives on through his NASED family. This year, the nominating committee for the board of directors consisted of me as chair, along with board member David Sachs, former board member Jack Exler, who's always willing to pitch in, and committee chairs Josh Beck, Kayla Hutterford Nelson, and Kayla Hutterford Nelson. The committee's report about the candidates has been distributed via email. So in its selection, the nominating committee sought to balance the need for diverse geographic female and minority representation, service as a committee chair or vice chair, and size of county represented. During the election earlier this month, the NASED membership voted to elect the following individuals. To serve a 2-year term ending in 2023, Marcos Ismael, Pima County, Arizona. Congratulations, Marcos. Thank you for stepping up earlier this year to complete Danny's term and to begin this new term. For officers, to serve a 1-year term ending in 2022. President Jim Johnston, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. Vice President Samantha Whitley, Clark County, Washington. Secretary Treasurer Tanya West Hafner, Hennepin County, Minnesota. NASED representative to the NACO board, that would be me, Mary Keating, DuPage County, Illinois. And the coveted, highly coveted term of immediate past president, Christy Moffitt, Travis County, Texas. Welcome, Tanya, to the executive committee and to serving in this position as secretary treasurer. Comprising the remaining balance of the board are Susan Au, Tarrant County, Texas, Kevin Crean, Nassau County, New York, Linda Jenkins, Los Angeles County, California, Krista Latier, El Paso County, Colorado, Sylvia Parham, Cook County, Illinois, Joe Riddle, Pinellas County, Florida, and David Sachs, Henrico County, Virginia. So congratulations to all of you. We also would like to acknowledge one executive committee member who's, after the election was conducted, has accepted a position with a city. Per NASED's governing bylaws, leadership in NASED is reserved only for counties rather than cities. So we want to acknowledge Samantha Whitley, currently with Clark County, Washington, and soon to be with the city of Vancouver, Washington, for her time not just on the board and executive committee, but for many years as an active member and leading NASED's committees. The best part is the city of Vancouver is also a member, so Sam will not be going far. Sam, congratulations on your new role and thank you for your service to NASED's leadership. NASED's new president, Jim Johnston, will soon select someone to serve in the vice president role, and we will share that information with membership at the time that decision is made. Congratulations to all of our board of director members, and thank you to the membership for participating in the election. NASED continues to be in good hands. So now it's my pleasure to ask newly elected President Jim Johnston with Allegheny County to take the floor and address NASED as the president.
Thank you, Mary and Christy and the entire membership for this great honor. You know, I want to echo a little bit of what Christy said about her term. I think we all agree that due to the crisis the country faced, her term was like no other, but yet she steered NASED forward as we adapted to a changing landscape, putting the organization in a position where we survive and are in our place to move forward. I hope I'm able to keep that momentum going this coming year. My first exposure to NASID was in the early 2000s when I was voluntold that at the last minute that I'd be attending the annual conference in Fort Worth and that I would be speaking on a panel. Talk about trial by fire. Despite my apprehensiveness, what I found was a group of people that were welcoming, knowledgeable, and eager to talk about one of my passions, community development. Over the years, I have seen many people come and go to the organization, and I've seen it change as well, adapting to the times, but despite all the changes, NASID has continued to strengthen its position in the community development and housing arena. People are the cornerstone of any professional organization. NASID is one of the most cohesive and friendly organizations I've had the pleasure to be involved with. My hope is that during the upcoming year is that you, as members, especially new members, become more involved. This can take many forms and occur at many different levels. NASID offers numerous opportunities to be active, including committee membership, on both online and hopefully at some point in the future, training, legislative and annual conferences, and technical assistance. I encourage everyone to pick at least one of the above and become an active participant. What you'll find is that participation isn't time consuming. Your national colleagues are very, very knowledgeable. And most importantly, your interaction will be beneficial. An organization like NASID thrives based upon connection. Connection to its members, connections to the agencies we all work with, and connection with elected officials. Staff has done an excellent job at establishing and growing these relationships. I am hopeful that we can build new relationships with our non-traditional members, establish relationships with agencies other than HUD, and use our connection with NACO as a means for courting new members and solidifying ties with existing members. This past year, NASID undertook the daunting task of creating a mission statement and vision. Many thanks to the board members who met to formulate the mission statement and vision. Your hard work and dedication to the process was phenomenal. Now comes the hard part, implementing the goals established during the planning process. It is crucial to continue moving the plan forward by operationalizing the goals. We will begin that process this year by working the goals where feasible into the committee work plans and other initiatives NASID undertakes. I started by saying how I became involved with NASID. Let me finish with what I got out of NASID. I've learned about the inner working of HUD and its programs. I've met with congressional staff and federal officials to discuss the importance of community development. I've gained insight into how CDBG programs are operated throughout the country. I've been part of policy development on a federal level. And most importantly to me, I've met wonderful, knowledgeable people that I'm proud to call my friends. With that, my hope is that all of you get more involved than my hope is that all of you get more out of NASID than I have. And if it hasn't started yet, then it does this upcoming year. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And with that, we have one last point of business to attend to. Next year, NASID is thrilled to offer our members and colleagues an opportunity to gather together in person for the 47th Annual Educational Conference and Training. Please welcome Kayla Nelson with El Paso County, Colorado, to tell us about next year's event in Colorado Springs. Kayla?
Thank you so much, Jim, and congratulations on being our new NASID president. So excited for you. To everybody else, hello. My name is Kayla Hedeford-Nelson. I'm the Economic Development Project Manager for El Paso County, Colorado's Economic Development Department. I'm also the chair of NASID's Economic Development Committee, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you guys today. I am here to formally invite and welcome all of you to our beautiful community of Colorado Springs, Colorado for the 2022 NASID conference. I wanted to share a quick 30-second video that highlights some of the beautiful things that you guys will see and experience out here in Colorado Springs when you join us for the conference. So with that, I'm going to share that really quickly. Perfect. So as you guys can see, El Paso County, Colorado, and specifically Colorado Springs is a beautiful area. But beyond the natural wonders that you guys will see and experience out here, we were also voted the #6 best place to live and by the U.S. News and World Report in 2021. We're home to the #1 most confident workforce in the nation, according to LinkedIn in 2020. And we are acknowledged as one of the top mid-sized cities for new or expansion projects by Site Selectors Guild in 2020 as well. In El Paso County, Colorado, we take a holistic approach to economic development. Our office is uniquely tasked with serving an ever-growing region with ever-changing needs. And so we navigate our dynamic economic landscape with a focused approach by offering diverse incentives for businesses and leveraging federal and state resources for housing and community development. Our goal is to assist in creating a robust, diversified, and equitable economic ecosystem. So with that said, we sincerely hope you all join us for the 2022 NASIG conference in person, which we all know will be such an incredible experience in and of itself. And while we know we are certainly biased, where better to host our first in-person NASIG conference post-COVID than here in the beautiful Colorado Springs, Rocky Mountains. So thank you guys all so much for your time. And we so sincerely look forward to seeing you guys all in person next year. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Kayla. With that, the annual business meeting is officially adjourned, and that wraps up our program for this year's NASID's annual educational conference and training. Once again, we are grateful for your attendance and participation. Look for a post-conference survey coming to your inbox this afternoon. NASID is eager to hear your feedback on what went well with this year's meeting and how we can continue to serve your educational networking needs. NASID will also be making these presentations available to you. Again, thank you to our hosts, sponsors, and the NASID staff for all of you making this a great event there. Since we're not there in person, thank you, everybody. And most importantly, we'll see you next year in Colorado Springs. Enjoy all.
Bye.
Mm.